Hello, family. How are you? It's Teresa here with uh, another update to the series called Holi-days and Holi-days. And we're coming up on the third Monday in May on Caesar's calendar of fake time. And this is the 25th of May, where they're going to have something they call Memorial Day. It's a holiday, yes, issued by the government. That's what he thinks about government. Anyhow, according to Wikipedia, this is a day for mourning, as in being sad for and regretting, being sorry for our dead, let's say mourning the dead, right? So it's a day for mourning and honoring personnel who died while they were in military service to the banks and corporations. The original name, before it was called Memorial Day, it was called, according to Wikipedia, it was called Decoration Day. So I think it was in part 2 of my intro series video. I discussed, my time on the dark side, and I got all these medals and decorations on my chest, right, for all the help I gave in the missions to do what the military does. So yeah, that's an appeasement. That's something that you're given because you've done something wrong, usually, like morally wrong. And it's something to kind of like a pacifier, like so that you don't actually mourn what you did. You're given something to say you should feel proud about what you did. Here, put this on your chest for everybody to see, your badge of honor. So yeah, Decoration Day. Give them another medal and it's all good, right? No. So, also according to Wikipedia, this holiday originated in 1868, which is 3 years after the so-called Civil War in the United States. Now, what Wikipedia does not disclose is that this day was invented by the government to appease the public, who had by then, in 1868, 3 years post-Civil War, they had realized at that point that the war was not about freeing slaves. They had realized that the war was about using debt-based fiat currency of the central banks to wage a war that the people had no appetite for and certainly no money to pay for. Once the public realized that that this war was waged for the purpose of basically bankrupting the country, it was officially bankrupted in 1871. The United States as a country was officially bankrupted in 1871. So that was only 3 years post Memorial Day invention. But once the country was bankrupted in 1871, it was then incorporated and became the Corporation of the United States. And the people were made into the human resources, or the tax slaves of this corporation, so it could be allowed to continue operations even though it was bankrupt. Um, so essentially, we shed our blood um, in historical levels, never before seen in the Civil War was a huge bloodshedding. And we did that for the purpose of bankrupting the country so that we could essentially implement nationwide slavery. This Memorial Day is, like all the holidays, is designed to appease us. So the government gives you a day off work if you work for the government. And then they ask the rest of us, all of us really, to participate in rituals. Rituals that consent to this treason, and rituals, that say, I'm okay with your contrived holiday, which, you tell me is for mourning and honoring the dead, but really it's not, because if we were really mournful, we would do something to ensure that no more bloodshed takes place. So the appeasement, you see, is in lieu of actions taken in righteous anger to expose the deception surrounding this historical bloodletting. The war itself is a blood sacrifice. Make no mistake about that. Those who follow the false light, those who follow the bearer of the false light, the God that they worship and the God that you believe you worship is two different. Actually, in reality, it's the same, but at least they worship knowingly, whereas most of the public is unknowing when they engage with the Religare, or the religion. So this blood sacrifice is made to their gods. Again, rather than taking some sort of action to find out what is the root of this, say, civil war in this case, or any of the, hundreds of wars since that time, instead of going to the root cause of this and saying, we are so mournful, and we so do wish to honor the dead, not just our own soldiers, but the innocent civilians that lost their lives in the countries that were destroyed therein. Because sorry is as sorry does, right? So you can't just say you're sorry, but then not take the action to follow it up by making sure you don't do that again. Otherwise, it's contrived, it's just a bunch of words, and they have no meaning because there's no action put with those words, right? So since 1868 and, the holiday and getting a day off work and all this good stuff and participating in all the rituals, we go further down this path of participation in this ritual, which essentially does the opposite of what we intend it to do. We don't honor or mourn our dead. We're not, mournful for the bloodletting. We just, think it's a day off work, right? So we go further down this path, and then we find ourselves, say, a little more than 200 years later, and we find ourselves in a world with never-ending, non-stop illegal wars of aggression all over the planet. yes, more of our military personnel die in these wars. So, again, I go back to the contrived nature of the holiday, and they tell us, the government, the mind control organization that created this holiday, tells us that this is the day that we are going to mourn and honor our dead. But we don't truly do that, do we? No. Think about all the literally hundreds of millions of just of our soldiers, like in the United States, never mind the soldiers on the other side of the battlefield, and certainly let's not forget the civilians because they're the biggest casualty. So we're talking about hundreds of millions. I think it's somewhere along the lines of 262 million people that the government has murdered. That's just the ones they murdered, never mind the ones they maim and kill, or excuse me, the ones they injure, or these are just the fatalities, right? Hundreds of millions of people. So because of this further bloodletting, they have to get us to consent to this bloodletting by participating in their ritual of Memorial Day. And let's not forget, because there is so much of this blood sacrifice going on, there are more rituals called Veterans Day, 11/11, that's my birthday, and the other one it's more recently called Armed Forces Day. It's a more recent. So we basically have 3 holidays that are supposed to mourn and honor those who have fallen in war. In addition to these holidays, of course, we have lots of memorials and monuments, and let's not forget the cemeteries. So people, according to Wikipedia, and this is actually, I can verify that at least this one time Wikipedia is telling the truth because I've seen this for myself, but people are encouraged to go to all the national veterans cemeteries where all the alleged bodies of the those who were killed in war are buried, right? And they're encouraged to go there and take a flag and put it on each one of the graves. Now, have a look at the link I shared in the show notes for what these flags look like. They are the original American flag, back when America was a country, not a corporation. The corporate flag has, it's the one you always see, right? The one you pledge allegiance to, the one that your so-called leaders get up and speak in front of. It's got yellow fringe on it. That yellow fringe indicates the United States Corporation. That's the yellow fringe of maritime corporate law. So, bear that in mind when you're waving your 4th of July flags, or, you see these corporate flags flying all over the country. There is a difference between, the United States country flag and the United States corporation flag. So it's not the corporation's flag that you see planted on these graves of the dead, but rather it's the flag of the original America, the country. I don't want to say the original America because that's a whole nother subject, which goes back centuries and centuries. But let's just say, for the purpose of the United States of America as it was seemingly assembled back in the 16th century. So when we place these flags on there, that's another ritual to say death to the country is dead. Long may it stay dead. long live the corporate United States, the one where we're all tax slaves. So, no, the 19th Amendment did not free the slaves. If you look into, if you can even find on this very heavily censored internet, but, and I'm almost always regretting that I didn't make an archive of this data. I just, it never occurred to me that it would be so censored, but the United States was incorporated in 1871, and it's the corporation they want to consider as being preeminent, and the 19th Amendment actually made tax slaves out of all of us. That's what the real, just like the Civil War was not about freeing slaves, the 19th Amendment is also, you could say, a hoax that was played on us. So then, you know, as the centuries go by and we continue to participate in the rituals to this false light that condone acts of genocide and illegal wars of aggression, it becomes even darker. And so what is Memorial Day now for most people? Honestly, it means time to go to the store and buy factory farmed meat products and throw them on the barbecue grill. And don't forget to wash it down with copious amounts of alcohol. Excessive amounts of what basically reduces to sugar in your body and destroys you slowly over time. We also have Memorial Day sales. Shopping sprees that are akin to Black Friday. They should actually call that day Dark Friday, not Black Friday. It would be a little more indicative, as opposed to just referring to black as a color, but referring to dark as that which is obscure, that which is hidden, that which is in so-called opposition to the light. But nonetheless, we have also, you know, these, it's the more, imagine that, more commercialism and materialism. Who would have guessed on a holiday? So now the holy version of, let's say we were to create a day, right, that we wanted to consider sacred and holy, the opposite of holly, to honor and mourn. We wouldn't create these contrived definitions, and we would not participate in rituals. Those things do not suffice for genuine mourning and honoring of the dead. They don't. When the belief, let's say in this case the belief is to honor and mourn the dead, does not align with the action, it's like driving a car with wheels that are out of alignment. You can go a few hundred miles, but eventually the wheels are going to fall off and you're going to crash. The beliefs must align with the actions. And if they don't, then it's a very dark ritual. And you have the free will choice to participate in it, but just so you know, especially when you do it collectively with the rest of humanity or the rest of your, you know, say, brothers and sisters in the United States, let's say, then collectively that creates further darkness for us, right? So the holy version of this would be to, if we truly aligned our actions with our beliefs, we would say we don't approve of, we don't consent to, we don't comply with, we don't condone this bloodletting. We don't condone violating the one and only universal free will law, which is to not do harm unto another. And we would stop these wars of illegal aggression, not just because we want to honor, humanity, but because with every bomb that's dropped, the corporation becomes that much more indebted. And the more indebted the corporation becomes, the more that the tax slaves are on the hook for. That's why back in 1878, it would have been unheard of to even fathom like something as low as 1% of your total income being taxed. And nowadays they take 30% just before you get your paycheck. And then at the grocery store and the gas pump and your utilities and your phone bill, everything has like 10 different line items of taxes theft. So it ends up being, more like 70% of everything we earn is stolen from us by way of taxes. So, because, hey, you got to pay for all the wars that you say that you want to see ended. But you only say it, you don't actually, you guys, you tax slaves don't actually stand up and take action based in righteous anger for the purpose of resolution and resolve and true alignment with what you say that you want to, that you don't agree with this bloodletting and what you do. So that's kind of how let's just say that's how the dark side perceives it. It's our tacit consent for them to continue. And sure enough, they sure do. I mean, I couldn't even begin to tell you how many more wars were waged, illegal wars of aggression waged from 1868 to, say, the year 2020. It's the holidays aren't working, honey. It's just you see how that piles on, and it just becomes more and more unresolved, unremedied emotion, energy in motion, action. So yeah, more and more of the military personnel will be killed. More and more innocent civilians will be killed. More and more countries who did absolutely nothing to aggress against us, and therefore we do not have universal law behind us to aggress against them. But we can get around that by getting you to participate in our ritual to condone that. It's called Memorial Day, Veterans Day. What was the other one that they just came up with recently? It's in my notes here. Can't keep up with all these holidays. It's getting more and more ridiculous. I think it was Armed Services Day or something like that. And then in addition to that, other countries have their so-called Memorial Days called Armistice Day and Observance Day and this and that and the other. Well, let's stop observing and start acting. It is our actions, not our observation, that causes real change, that has real effect. Admittedly, I'm very passionate about this because the mosquitoes are everywhere now. I'm getting eaten alive. I'm very passionate about this because I do want to see an end to the wars. I do want to see an end to the blood sacrifices. I do want to see humanity stepping back into its power to create a different reality by lining its beliefs and actions up together so they're congruent, so they're resonant, not dissonant, not out of alignment. So for all those reasons, it's my buddy up there again. I guess he said, enough said. And the gecko agrees. Do you see how that works, family? Do you see how we're all connected? I love you, family. Namaste.